We're going to go ahead and get started with panel number 2. Hi, everyone. My name is Margaret Solomon. I am currently the Black Community Endorsed Senator this year, ASUC Senator this year. Thank you, guys. And I'm so glad to be able to work on this alongside UCSA, the DCC, and Chinyce for bringing this up too as well. This is amazing. And I just want to make sure I introduce our panelists. So first up, we have Conrad Crump. He's a California senator, disability rep, as well as an actor. Can we get a round of applause for Conrad? Amazing. Oh, sorry. And then next up, we have Natalia Cornejo-Ayers. She's a UCSA Disability Justice Officer. If we could get a round of applause. And then we have Chinyce Cole-Henry, and they're a DCC fellow.
Thank you. Thank you, car captioners.
Hey, thank you, guys. So first question is, disability justice traditionally centers care as a collective practice rather than individual responsibility. Can you talk about how cultures of care might already exist within the Black community?
Is that kicking it off to me first? Hey, everybody. I'm Conrad Crump. I use he, him pronouns. For a visual description, I'm a Black man, brown complexion. I'm wearing black and gold glasses that I need. They're very much need. And my hair is in locks and a ponytail, and I'm wearing a cardigan sweater and brown pants. I do want to say in the intro, I think you said a senator. I'm not a senator, just to be clear. I want to make sure I get that out. I do work with different people in policy around disability justice, but just so we're clear, I'm not a senator. But in terms of cultures of care within the Black community, you can find that. It's funny, when I grew up in a church environment. And the Black church has always been a staple in the Black community in this country. And they have this saying, it's like whether 2 or 3 are gathered, right? So that means like it could just be me and Chinyce, like just somewhere walking, and I'm like talking and we're just vibing, and that's a community of care. And it expands, right? There's so many different types of communities that we find ourselves in, whether it's academic, social, whether it's through our jobs or our community engagement that we do with different folks in communities. But ultimately, I think the important word in that phrase is care. Care, actually, I feel like is an action word where you're doing something. So, I mean, not to ramble on, but, there's been so many different forms, from school to churches to just being at granny's house or hanging out with your cousins. All of those, to me, are communities of care. So, yeah. And then I felt like there was like a second part to that question. So I just want to make sure I'm answering it properly.
See, that was mainly it. Just like, can you talk about how cultures of care might already exist within the Black community?
Yeah, family, I think, is also a huge piece of that. And family looks so many different ways, right? Whatever you may think of family, it doesn't necessarily always mean blood related, so just want to put that tidbit in there too.
I think to jump into this question, like you were talking about family, and I feel like I think very much of like kind of like matriarchal care in many ways. And it is intertwined with what we were talking about earlier, just kind of about like systems that like try to take away from like the Black community and stuff like that. And I feel like from that, I think a lot about just like a history of like matriarchy and a history of like just like kind of like, no matter like what, I'm gonna like show up for you, in that kind of way. The image I have in my head is kind of like your mom being like, oh, you gotta like, you gotta like handle like, oh, the lights are off. Sorry. when you're like you have some situation at school where someone's like picking on you or someone's like mad at you, and it's like, oh, you got to handle it, because if not, I'm going to end up in jail, or I'm going to end up like handling that kid, or I'm going to find someone else. But it's this thing of like, this consistent thing of like wanting to help you, but also like if you can't fight your battles, I'm always like going to like show up and like support you in those battles. Yeah, and I feel like that's like I was saying, what I really think about when I think about communities of care in the Black community. It's like we talked about in the panel before, we talked about kind of like the stigma, but the stigma really just comes from like the desire to be able to move forward in the world and what feels like freely, because it's like if there's no target on your back, you're going to be able to swim easier, and if you're not carrying extra things, you're going to be able to stand up taller, which, you know, we're kind of talking about today how it can be a little bit more complicated than that. But I think at the end of the day, it's like, in despite of all these like conditions in which there's been attempts to break down the Black family, it still like really stands up tall.
Yeah, thank you guys. I think I wanted to, well, I'll introduce myself again. Hi, my name is Natalia Cornejo-Ayers, and you know, I've been working with UCSA for a while. I'm the Disability Justice Officer, and basically, again, like that means I represent students at the UC with disabilities. I really love this work. One thing about it is it's difficult. It's difficult to organize. I identify as a visionary. I love to organize people, but being disabled, sometimes that you know, being disabled myself and representing all of us and getting us, you know, organized, but also people that want to support us organized is really hard. And I found a lot of community in the Black community, but I think I want to touch on something a little bit different. Is that you know, I'm Afro-Latina, you know, I'm Black and Mexican, and I feel like in our community, you know, especially with us being, you know, like, you know, recently immigrated, like generations of recently immigrated family, there's a lot of stigma in our culture that makes it a little bit hard to find communities of care, you know, within ourselves. I feel even within like family and like knowing that, you know, when I was telling them how I do this work, it's, you know, oh, it's so great you're doing that for people. And it's hard for them to remember, you know, I have invisible disabilities. Remembering that I'm doing it also for myself. I'm trying to lead this change in order to make my environment better as well. You know, I came into this work very angry. You know, I dealt with a lot of, you know, professors not accommodating me, and I'm wondering why it took so long to get accommodations, medication, you know, for a disability I've had for a long time and it's been recorded. And I think that I found community in advocacy. I started with, you know, Afro4, and I was, you know, I had roommates with disabilities, and, you know, we're all going through the same thing. It's like we'd have a test and we're like so stressed out and anxious. I'd be more friends on Afro4. You know, 3 of my roommates now are disabled and Black. And it's like, we live in this environment where there's not many of us that are Black on campus. So when we talk about this and we talk about our experiences, like, we're already undermined. We're already some of the only Black people in our classes. So like, you know, this event was made to bridge that community and try to find out not only like how can we as Black people get rid of that stigma within ourselves and like start bringing it out and not trying to sound like, you know, the angry Black women or the angry Black people when we're talking about this, because we're angry, we're tired, you know, we want to see better for our community, but also, you know, finding out how to talk to each other and learn how we can, you know, let other people know what we experience. Because when we come across that, you know, humbly and talk about it candidly, I feel like there's so many things that are different from what you see on like a bill. Like, you know, we read these bills about disability all the time. We're doing this budget ask and you see it on paper, but it really comes to life when we talk about it in these spaces and we come to legislators with our real stories, talk about the communities we've built. And I think we can learn a lot from the Black community and the disability community, you know, bridging those together and realizing, you know, we exist there. We are in those stories. A lot, you know, our cultures are intertwined and we have to listen to one another.
Guys, I really appreciate it. And I love the points that were made about the church and how the church has worked to build that kind of community, and then the points made on how our mothers and like our older people kind of like fight for us, and the points made in the family that we make while we're in college and the people that we meet and how difficult it is to be Black and disabled too at the same time when you're 4% on campus and then you're also a smaller percentage of 4% too as well. I really appreciate all of those. So yeah. And then want to go on to our next question, which is what can Black community members learn from disability communities' culture of care? I don't know if you guys want to start this way this time.
Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, the question states, what can Black community members learn from disability communities' culture of care?
It's like double Dutch. We're about to jump in. I'm like, you ready? You ready? Let's go. Okay. No, but I think I'll just, try to take a stab at it. I think believing individuals with disabilities when they say they have a disability is a great start. A lot of times from what my experience as someone who also has invisible or unseen disabilities is that when you state a problem or a challenge that you might have, especially if it's something that's not visibly seen, because let me just hold on. So like when you see someone, who's using a wheelchair user or someone whose arm is in a sling or something, immediately you think to make accommodations for them. You don't ask this person whose arm might be in a sling to carry a heavy object, or you don't ask this person to climb up a bunch of stairs, just things like that. But when there are invisible things going on, a lot of times people don't think to make that connection, or even if the person has stated what the thing is, to make accommodations for them. And a lot of times in the Black community, at least from my experience, I've been told, oh, just pray on it. Or, oh, you just got to work harder. Or, oh, or even a failure of my own, like maybe you're just not paying attention, or maybe you're just not, all of these different things. So I think, it's a two-way street. The disability community can learn from the Black community as well. But the Black community can certainly learn from the disabled community in terms of, I would say, first and foremost, believing a person when they say they have a disability, or if they decide to even disclose that they have a disability. I think that that's something that is a start. And I have other thoughts too, but I'll like open it up,
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. I feel like I'm grounding them, but I think the context is I'm a double major at Berkeley. I'm a film major. I want to work in entertainment, but also sometimes film classes can be boring because we're making these futile attempts to negotiate the world, but it's still very much built around like Eurocentric ideas of what media is and how to like really create things. So I ended up doing research on the side for fun, which is a crazy decision. But as I've been kind of building, my research is on Blackness and disability and kind of this conception of building. And the last long kind of thing I was looking at was comparing like the disability rights movement and the civil rights movement. And kind of, for one, just tracing the trajectory of kind of they had the same turn where you have the civil rights movement and then you have the Black Power movement and you have the disability rights movement and then you have the disability justice movement. And so for one, just that idea of like, let's go deeper to it. But the comparative thing that I was kind of getting at, blinking a little bit. So I stole this a little bit. They always say when they're talking about like kind of like gender stuff and stuff, they say like, believe when people tell you who they are. And as Conrad was saying, I feel like my contention that I'm hoping to like share with the community is to believe people when they tell you what they need. And it's ripped right out of there, but I think it's just really that essential thing of, I feel like in disability, it's like the care comes from the fact that you are the author of your body and you are the author of being able to like really understand yourself. And we have all these things where we're trying to anticipate how we can best take care of each other, because we know that once you go out into the world, chance that the people around you aren't going to take care of you, much more try to harm you. But you can't anticipate always the needs of those in your community. And so I really just feel like it's a thing of understanding that there is more to be learned about the best way to like pull people in and draw people in. And that's what we see from the change from rights to justice. And I feel like that's like something that I feel like is kind of breaching when I talked in my opener about the Bay Area movement. I feel like that's a conversation that kind of started just like not even a decade ago. And I feel like should also be shared within the Black community.
Thank you, guys. I think what I have to say to that, it's something that I think a lot of communities need to take away. But I'll start, this is something, it's a unique experience within the Black community. I feel like in this era, we're entering a stage where, us as Black people, we're entering a stage where we can start to develop generational wealth. We can start to, change the trajectory of how our lives have historically been. And there's a lot of pressure on us. I've definitely, felt a lot of pressure. I've seen, and it's not necessarily, it's latent, you know what I mean? It's this latent pressure where, you succeed something and your family's like, you got to keep going. Like, wow, you're doing this, and you feel that pressure to keep going. And, as we become more successful than our ancestors, we get to go to university and, we have access to scholarships and access to other things. There's this pressure to keep being exceptional. And like this whole Black excellence culture where it's hard to feel like you could slow down or unless you're just, you may disappoint your family. You may not, get beyond their expectations of you. We have this, especially in Mexican culture too, like, as an Afro-Latina, like, it's like, we want to see you better. We've sacrificed so much to you to come to this country. And now it's your turn to like build that for us and take care of us. And I think that within the disability community, we always, we want to rest. It's like when we were trying to mobilize initially for this, budget ask, it was like this hard feeling of like, there's this really huge need to mobilize now because the school is not going to wait for us. They've never waited for us. But we all have needs. It's like, I remember putting myself under so much stress during that period. Like not eating for a few days, not sleeping very well. And it's like, I kept thinking to myself, like, no, like this is what we have to do for our communities, we have to do for my family. But I think remembering that in our community, like as people of color and as Black people, that we need to look to our community for support and to reframe those ideas that we must be as successful as possible within our generation, do everything because everybody's counting on us. I think we also remember to take a break and look at yourself, because we can, I have to look at myself and say, I represent this community where people are constantly telling us, we live in a society where productivity determines our worth. And if we cannot be productive, then we are no longer viable. And I have to tell myself that every day. It's like, I need to take a break. Even like this whole week has been so stressful. And it's like, I'm like, okay, no, I'm going to get home and take a break. And it's like, no, I need to do this. But I think remembering that every day and like remembering to be grateful, remembering to say that, this is a great opportunity and I'm not going to waste it by taking a break today is really important.
Can I piggyback on that a little bit? Thank you for what you said. You raised a lot of great points. And I just think about the whole aspect of like, for me being first generation college student, being like the first one in my family to actually go to a university and, having that pressure that you talked about. I think it's so important that folks realize that, yeah, we can be strong. And I know that's the thing in the Black community is that we're strong, but without support and without, proper support and guidance and whatnot, we can actually be suffering in silence where people may not know. And there is that added pressure of like, oh, you have to be like the whole Black excellence thing. It's like, well, what about Black mediocrity? Like, why can't I just be regular? You know, why do I have to go above and beyond every single time? And for me, someone who's climbed and ascended, I would say, in a professional world, academic world, the higher and higher and higher. It's almost like for those who might be interested in like hiking or going up altitudes, the higher you get, the less air that's up there, and it makes it harder to breathe. So, you know, I've realized there's not too many people up here that look like me, and the pressure, I can't fumble, I can't mess up, I can't step outside the line, whereas other people can and get elected to the highest political office in the country. I mean, you know, be felons and everything, but that is not my truth, you know? So I have to balance that with, you know, trying to remember where I come from and like keep all the ancestors and my family and everything. So it's just all those different things, trying to balance that. And I feel like that's just something that's really important, and having that support is so crucial, so that you don't suffer in silence. So.
Guys so much. Oh, thank you guys so much. I feel like I heard so many points there. One, believe in people when they tell you what they need is one of the biggest things that I heard. And also learning to take a break and not having to like push yourself too much if it doesn't like fit in what you need. And I really like resonate with that. I really resonate with what you guys are saying too as well. Also, as like an immigrant who moved from Nigeria, it is very difficult to kind of tell your parents like, well, maybe I don't want to go to the #1 public school in like in the freaking world. So yeah, it's that kind of like owing people back things, especially when you come from generations and generations of people who never had the chance to be in this space that we are in right now. You feel like you owe it to other people, but it's very important that we need to take that break. So one of the biggest lessons I'll take from that question is that the Black community needs to learn how to take a break sometimes and do something for yourself and rest too as well.
We have this thing at my job.
Yeah.
It's called Black Girl Day of Rest, where like the Black women it's an annual thing on the calendar where Black women take the day off. And then there's one that I'm trying to implement called Black Boy Day of Joy, where it's just like, you don't like, I'm taking a day. I'm gonna go and just enjoy my life and do the things that make me happy and the things that bring me joy. Like I deserve at least that much, and rightfully so. So there should be nothing wrong with that.
Make it bi-weekly.
Right. Once a month.
Once a year,
No, literally, that's amazing. I love that Black boy joy because I feel like our young Black boys don't really get a chance to be just happy and be themselves. So that's amazing. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead to the third question. It says self-advocacy can be especially difficult when systems like schools, healthcare, or workplaces feel confusing to navigate, or there has been a historical and continual institutional mistrust. How do you show up / advocate for yourself and the community both inside and outside of the classroom?
I think I could speak on that first. You know, I've had to, since I started in middle school advocating for my disability, not even just advocating, just trying to exist with having a disability and going to school. You know, there was like a weird reception. It's like, just as Black people, like we're kind of seen, we have this stigma attached to us that we're lazy or we don't do a lot of work and we're disruptive and we're loud. So for me to have been like this loud kid that was like doing amazing in some classes and was like failing at others, it was, you know, when I had that diagnosis come in, you know, when I was finally getting tested with the teachers, it was like, oh, like, okay, like, so, you know, where some were like, that makes sense. Others did not acknowledge it as part of my identity at all. And even in high school, you know, when I had extra time, I was very transparent about what I had and telling other students that this is an opportunity they have as well. There was other students, you know, I was in a very competitive program where, you know, taking a break, you know, the whole culture was like, oh, like I'm grinding today, I'm having a mental breakdown. And it's like, it's so normalized. And it's like, oh, you get extra time on assignments. Like, that must be nice. Like, and like that whole culture was just so, it reinforced that stigma. And I felt like in those high academic places that I could not take, you know, my reasonable accommodations, you know? And when I got to college, I realized just how bad it was, especially in the UC system, where maybe different than CSUs, NCCs that have, harsher or better protections for disabled students. Here it was like, okay, you have all these professors that are like, the best in their field, and they're expecting, and they've maybe tenured, and they're expecting you to do your best. They don't really even like talk to you very much. And you got to go to office hours and do on top of your 6 hours a week of assignments, you got to do this and form a connection. I was really shocked to find that some professors were a little bit ableist when it came to accommodations. And I was very glad that I was comfortable talking with my specialists and comfortable talking with my peers. And that was something I had to learn through just going through so many terrible experiences with advocating for disability. And I had the courage to finally tell one of my professors that I admire a lot. I was like, hey, like you didn't really provide accommodations on the last exam, and I hope that you'd be able to. I was really good student in that class, so I'd hope that that they would take my advice. And I still found that there was a lot of anger from that professor and maybe the culture of like that class and other classes. This is not an isolated incident where there's this feeling of like, oh, it's like we don't really understand it, but we're gonna have to comply with it anyways. But like you can feel that tension. And it's hard for us as students to come up and say like to people that we respect very much. We want, letters of rec. We want them to think how to invite us to do research with them, to call on us in class, to be able to say like, I have these needs. And I felt this duty to do that because there's so many other students that are not able to do that they're afraid they can't make those office hours. They can't make that time to talk to the professor. And then facing retaliation afterwards and like, okay, the professor doesn't care. The GSI is going to grade you down because you just want extra time or you just need a room when you're doing your exam. And I think we need people to understand us more than, because it's hard to advocate for ourselves. We need to create a culture where accommodations are exactly that and not an extra perk that somebody has that you don't. Because that's what makes them hard to get. If they were taken as is like, hey, I have a visual disability. I can't, I get migraines nearly every day, and that's my disability, and you can't see that. I can't explain that to you. I'm not going to. It's not my job to. But it comes in a lot of spaces, and also that, being in student government, there's a lot of voices that are happening. Everybody wants the best for their community, and it's a beautiful thing. And on top of that, there's sometimes, we all get caught up in our things, especially in my role where it's essentially just me, and I'm relying on a lot of advocates in my space to advocate alongside me, even if they're not part of the community. We want to create this culture where people are speaking with us. I feel like there's a lot of times where, especially with disabled identity, that we are spoken, about just because of spoken for and not alongside because of assumptions that, maybe we can't do it ourselves. But then consequentially, like, wait, why is this person not doing as much as the other person? And it sometimes makes me feel like I have to overperform. It's hard. That's like trying to bridge that gap. It's like, wait, I need to take a break because I need to practice what I preach. But I also want to do the most I can for my community when I have that power. I think learning that we need to be working together and also speaking with doesn't mean like I have this I really care about disability and I want to uplift it, so I'm going to speak with somebody else that has it. It's like, hey, like speak about it when they're not present. Like, if you see ableism out there, identify and say, wait, why do we not have captioning for this video in this class? Because I get embarrassed. I have to raise my hand. Hey, can we turn on captions for this video? It's like, okay, now the disabled girl wants the captions. Oh, this video doesn't have captions. Sorry. It's like, if you can ever speak up for somebody that you may not know is in that room, that's how we can practice self-advocacy and like group advocacy. I think that's the most important part of disability advocacy. We all have a capacity, so we have a lot of us that need to work together to achieve our goals.
I would just say yes, and it's so for me as an advocate, right? My job is literally to advocate for individuals with disabilities in the state, and so I'm constantly, you know, whether it's talking to consultants from different legislative committees, talking to assembly members, senators, their staff, other people in our coalition. You know, we're always constantly having conversations, but nothing about us without us, right? So also having the community tell me or talk to me or come with me so that I can amplify whatever it is message that they want to communicate. But a lot of times, you know, when you're trying to advocate even for yourself, sometimes you might not even have the vocabulary. You might not even know the words or the terms or how to, you know, so that can be looked at as if you don't care or if you're not invested when you don't know the language to even speak to you know, articulate what it is that you need. So I think a lot of times having conversations and, you know, having a type of like, you know, spaces like this where we can talk about some of these things where it can be a safe space where people can ask, well, what did you mean by that? Well, what does this mean? And what does that mean? It just kind of, you know, expands their vocabulary so that way they can go to advocate for themselves, whether in this space or all the way up to the state capitol testifying or whatever the case may be. I feel like it's super necessary for people to be able to have the language to be able to speak so that folks can understand what it is that they're going through. So,
Yeah, I feel like for this question, I was a little stuck. Not I feel like I'm still like learning in terms of like the advocacy part. I feel like for me it's been a lot of like a level of like, oh, people pleaser, oh like, or oh, kind of quiet. And I think the thing I was thinking about, especially like as we were doing this panel, is I feel like just like the way I try to like build my home is really important to me. My roommate's like wheeling around taking photos right now. But it's just um yeah, I live with them and I live with my partner, and we were talking about recently how uh UC Berkeley has a housing crisis for context. So I've moved every year that I've been in college, and I've been in college 5 years. And so I've had a lot of different situations in terms of the people where I've lived with where it's been like where it has been like kind of intimate or it has been like really hostile. And I think because I'm like a student like different types of disabilities, and I'm managing often a full course load because I really like to learn and all the classes look cool, and then I'm in the classes and I'm like, it's too many classes, but I can't go back now. So I'm like, I usually have a heavier course load, and I'm working part-time, and something that's really important to me is that when I like come home, it is like built in a way that like kind of serves me. And so it's a little thing of like I just like put an organizer in like my refrigerator. Like I just found a random like cup and I like put it there, and I'm like, that's where I'm like, I'm gonna put my lunch there. And it takes up a bit of space, but then I like can see my lunch and I can like grab it and take it to school. Or I like carry a lunchbox just because it's like I don't know. I'm not gonna be able to like buy Chipotle often. Like I don't know. I feel like a lot of people are like, I didn't eat, I bought food. I'm like, none of the above. None of the above is gonna work well. And so I have like this bulky lunchbox that like is actually falling apart. But it comes with me just about wherever I go. I always feel because I've been going to like networking events, and I like have the lunchbox with me, and I'm like, is this bad? Can you bring a lunchbox to your networking events? But it is like the little things where I feel like there's so many things that are being asked to perform for myself, like as a student trying to show up in the world and trying to move forward. And I think the least I can do is like kind of like have prep work. You know, like when you're boxing and they have the guys who dab your face. I feel like it feels like that. Like I'm like, the least I can do is I can have this box be really built for me, and have this box where people are dabbing my face be built in a way that like really honors my needs, because it's like the boxing match is like it is crazy. And then another thing that came up for me was asking for help. Something like, because the question talked about medical, and I have been like trying to navigate the fact that I just like being neurodivergent and with the schedule, I like don't like go to the doctor as often as I should. And it can be a little thing of like, I don't know why my leg is hurting. And one of the services that we had at Berkeley, that's gone through a lot of changes. I believe it's still like it exists now, but it's changed. It's Trio. But I remember the old Trio advisor from like 2 years ago. It's like I've maybe been in therapy for a year. And we were talking about a lot of different things, but I felt like there was things that was like, I don't go to the doctor because I like forget all the time. It didn't really feel like a therapy issue. And I went to the Trio guy and I was like, I don't go to the doctor and my foot hurts and I don't know why. And he was like, okay, we can make a plan for this. And I'm sure that's like not what like folks were thinking about when they were like, we need like disabled coordinators. But that's what was working for me. And that's like something I did. And yeah.
I wanted to touch on something Chinyce said, like with the lunch boxes, like these things that we have to take care of us that we bring around, they can be a lunchbox, they could be a stress ball, they could be stepping outside. You know, one of the things that our previous panel was talking about was like normalizing the things that we need for care and not making them, you know, not trying to bring attention to them because they should be normal. There's been a lot of times at student advocacy events where I will just like, I will get a migraine and I'm, you know, a lot of times I will try to sit through it because there's definitely that pressure. It's like, we're all here for a reason, or, you know, or we're on student fees going out there. But I'm like, wait, what am I doing if I'm not like taking 5 minutes outside and like, you know, if everybody's wondering why is she sitting outside and like looking at the wall, it's like, you know what? I actually did need 5 minutes to look outside the wall because I'm about to have a panic attack and I have a migraine. Or, hey, you know what? I'm actually going to step out and like go lay down in the hotel for an hour and like in the dark because my eyes hurt and my head hurts. And then coming back better. And like those things are normal. It's like, you know, if you know, we're asking for, hey, can we print out this entire agenda? I need to print it. I cannot look at screens. Do you have to say that? It's just, hey, can we print out this entire agenda? And it's like, there shouldn't be a why. These things, we shouldn't have to be questioning these things. And that's a form of self-advocacy. If you have something you could to show for it, to leave that room when you're tired, to, you know, take that break that's not included into what the status quo or the agenda, you know, do that for yourself until it becomes normal, until people stop asking you questions about it and start understanding that that's part of your identity.
Amazing. Thank you guys. There was a lot to learn there too as well. Just kind of like self-advocacy, being proud of the things that you need in order to take care of yourself because you're not wrong for wanting to take care of yourself. And also just making sure that when we're talking about disabled advocacy, we're also prioritizing disabled voices in it too as well. So yeah, I'll go through the fourth question is, how have the principle of disability justice shown up in your community work and your activism?
I don't think those got printed, so I'm going to read them right now. They were on the document. Give me one second. Oh, do you have them memorized?
I remember one.
Okay.
Because I looked at it and I was like, wait, I need to remember.
You do yours and then I'll read them out.
Okay. Because I don't think anybody, maybe nobody's familiar. If we're not familiar, like, hey, we should educate the rest of the room too.
Can you repeat the question again?
I was missing a portion of it, but it says, out of the principles of disability justice, Chinyce is going to read it out in a little bit, showing up in your community work and your activism.
Should I read the principles now? Yes. Okay. Intersectionality, we do not live single issue lives, from Audre Lorde. Ableism coupled with white supremacy supported by capitalism, underscored by heteropatriarchy, has rendered the vast majority of the world invalid. Intersectionality. Leaders of the most impacted, as Conrad was talking about, we are led by those who most know these systems. Anti-capitalist politics and an economy that sees land and humans as components of profit or expendable. We are anti-capitalist by nature, having non-normal body minds. Commitment to cross-movement organizing, shifting how social justice movements understand disability and contextualize ableism. Disability justice lends itself to politics of alliance. So we're all working together in this. recognizing wholeness. People have inherent worth outside of commodity relations and capitalist notions of productivity. Each person is full of history and life experience. Sustainability, we pace ourselves individually and collectively to be sustained long term. Our embodied experiences guide us toward ongoing justice and liberation. Commitment to cross disability solidarity, we honor the insights and participation of all of our community members, knowing that isolation undermines collective liberation. And 3 more, interdependence, we meet each other's needs as we build towards liberation, knowing that the state solutions inevitably extend into the further control of our lives. Collective access, as brown, black, queer disabled bodies, we believe flexibility and creative nuance that go beyond able-bodied/minded normativity to be in community with each other. And then collective liberation, no body or mind can be left behind. Only moving together can we accomplish the revolution we require. Okay, those are the 10 principles of disability justice from Sins Invalid. If you guys want my phone.
I'll just because I know our time is not on our side, but I'll just say, for me, I personally and professionally ensure that I am looking at the aspect of intersectionality in everything that I try to do. Particularly working with Disability Rights California, being their policy advocate there, making sure that the voices are, individuals that are from many different slices of life, and understanding that there are different intersections, and identities, and making sure that the voices of those which are often at certain intersections might have one intersection where there's a strong voice, but the other intersection may not. So trying to be able to capture all of that and then bring that to the conversation, bring that to the people who sign laws and introduce laws and pass laws. So those are some of the things that I try to make sure that I do. I know particularly, more specifically with the work that we do, a lot of my work is focused on education and public safety. So looking at how Black boys or Black bodies in general are impacted by law enforcement, SROs, student resource officers in schools, looking at disproportionate rates of suspension of Black girls, like all of these different types of, intersectionality of having Black students who are also disabled, and how that number is even increasingly more, is just some of the things that we as an organization want to make sure that we're fighting and advocating for and against. So I'll just say that those are some of the things that I try to make sure I bring with me, in addition to all of the other principles. But for me, I know intersectionality is a big one, because we as Black people are not a monolith. We're not just one identity. There are so many different types of Black people. And with that, I feel like, going back to the first question about what the Black community could, learn, is like being accepting of all of the different types of Black folks, even if they don't look like you, or if they don't believe like you, or they don't think like you, or dress like you, or whatever, speak like you. At the end of the day, we're all one. So those are some of the things that I want to like uplift and try to make sure I keep as like a guiding principle for myself.
Yeah, just to jump in. So like I mentioned, I'm a film major, so I feel like most of my anecdotes would probably be filmmaking. But I have a particular experience that kind of led me to do the last project I did. Literally just as I was starting to get into like disability theory and things of like that, in like end of 2023, I ended up submitting like a film kind of idea for my final project to the class I was in. But before that, I had been on a shoot where it was kind of it was bad. It was beautiful. It was like this queer film. The lighting was great, and they had this fancy camera. But it was also like nobody was sleeping, and like nobody was eating, and it was like over like 36 hours. And I was just like, I will never run a film set like this in my life. And I just remember being just like, this is insane. And so I think going to the principles, I think there's one that talks about like moving as fast as like the slowest person. And I think that is really important to me in terms of like, and also it talked about sustainability and the fact that it shouldn't destroy you to be able to make the work that you want to do. And we have all these stories of people in fact getting destroyed like to do this work. And I feel like I'm like thankful for all the work that's been done to the point of like exhaustion. And I also feel like as we move forward, like we talked about, I don't think it should be normed to continue to do work to the fact that it destroys you. So the project was a lot of things. It took a long time to first get started because like we talked about being a minority within a minority. It took a long time to like find like proofreaders who like were available to like read a script that was like focused like on like Blackness and disability. And then to find like the lead actors. Amira, who we saw today, was one of the lead actors for that film. But it was like a last minute of last minute thing to find like leads who were like Black and disabled and embodied and like wanted to like embody these characters. But I think what was important to me was just like how'd I show up? Like there wasn't always like food, but it's like there's always granola bars. You know what I mean? On set. And then it's like, okay, the set needs to end in 5 hours and we're running 3 hours late. I'm like, we're taking a 20-minute break because the actors look tired. And I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen next, but there is no way we're going to like push through for the sake of pushing through. And it was little things like that where I really was like hoping and trying to like curate spaces that felt like they could like get hard work done without being destructive, because I feel like that's like how work should be, and how I hope for work to continue to be when possible.
Can I just say thank you for that? So aside from the advocacy work I do, I'm also an actor, an equity professional actor, and there are times when people will try to push past that fifth hour or like try not to feed you. So kudos to you and all you do in your vision, because people don't be trying to feed people or give people breaks. So that's a real thing. So thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo a lot of the same thing. I wanted to talk about the third print. I don't know if it's second or third, but that, you know, our leaders being the most impacted, and I feel like that's definitely true in a lot of our spaces. I feel like, you know, in my space in student advocacy and UCSA, I'm surrounded by so many people that are just incredible. Like they're leaders of their campus, and it's like we don't get to talk to each other so much because everybody's doing their own thing. But you talk to somebody for 5 minutes, and they're like, you know, and you know, sometimes they're humble about it. They won't tell you until the fifth time that they casually mention, "Oh yeah, I did this huge campaign in my campus." It's like, oh my God, like how do you do that? And they always come from a place where it's like, I was affected by X, Y, or Z, and I had to fight. I had to do something about it because I was gonna, you know, lose my mind, or I was gonna be harmed, or I was gonna be kicked out of the university, or I was gonna have food next week. And I feel like that's definitely the space I occupy. There's so many weeks, weekends, days, weeks. I feel like for the last like 4 weeks, I have been so tired. And I think with that being said, like the idea of like our leaders being the most impacted, I think we need to emphasize on leaders, because leaders imply that there's people behind us that are supporting us. And remembering that there should be a team of people supporting you and helping you, and that it's a collaborative effort, because we all require, you know, radical rest, and we all need to remember to take a break. And I think I also have to understand that, like, I'm still learning how to do that. When you go to, you know, when you come from a place where you never, you know, I never thought I was going to go to university when I was in middle school, maybe not even until like the middle of high school. And then like being in this space and being like, you know, telling myself, okay, well, am I really smart? Or am I just working hard? Like, that's not the same thing. and I see all these people that are just like, I think are so much greater than me because I think they have this inherent quality, and realizing that a lot of it is working hard, but feeling you have to work harder and harder, and then still not feeling accepted by that. Where was I going with this? But like that idea that we don't need to be as exceptional, and like we can take a break, and like again, like what I said before, well, I'm thinking it was like I had a thing that was gonna wrap this up, guys, I promise. But like I think trying to remember that you can't do everything, that there sometimes should be a lot of people backing you, but they're not. And remembering that like you're in that space for a reason. You don't have to be the best. You do go to this institution, but remember like you got there for a reason. You don't have to keep proving yourself every day. You know, this is some of us are like, you know, I've recognized this, and I've seen this in so many of my peers. It's like we're working so hard and we think we're failing. Like me and my roommate especially, I'm always telling her, like, she's always stressed out. She's pre-med, and like, oh my God, like bless her. But you know, she's always like, I'm so stupid, like I'm gonna fail, like I can't do this. And I always just be like, and I'm telling her this, and I needed to tell myself this too, you know, because we're trying to be leaders of our spaces. We're trying to speak for our community by being the best of ourselves when we're also affected by those same things. I'm telling her, like, you know what, like you are still, like, think about it for a second. Like, you know, your parents immigrated here, or my parents immigrated, my grandparents immigrated here. And, you know, they came and did their big one. And then now you're coming into this and you've amassed this amazing amount of generational progress, despite all the barriers that came onto you, you know, being a person of color. You know, my roommate is Muslim, and like how that much has affected, and like living in San Francisco where there's so much racism. And then, you know, me personally, I went to a very, you know, predominantly Asian school. And like there was not a lot of Black people, and like being labeled as like this loud person, like, oh, like Natalia is, you know, I didn't feel very smart myself. That was like pushed onto me, and I didn't realize it until I got to be in my own space with different people that wasn't true. And then, you know, we succeeded despite all of that. We get to go to this amazing university when a lot of us didn't think we'd go to school in the first place. And it doesn't have to be an amazing university. It could be community college. You're the first one in your family to go to college. You could just be going to college. Maybe your parents go to college too. It's hard for us. It's genuinely hard. It's paying for it. And realizing that, like, you, in perspective, you are still doing so much more than whatever could have been expected of you. And that is something to be proud of. And that is something that you have to recognize and like remind yourself, you don't have to be sometimes as, you know, you maybe won't get to the same point that a lot of people have had generations of experience built on. You know, it's like I have had people that are like surprised when I say, you know, my dad didn't go to college, or you know, my mom like had to work several jobs and live in the United States by herself to go to college because that was a sacrifice she wanted to make for an education. That is exceptional. And like, if you don't match the people that have had, you know, both their parents, they met in college at some amazing school, or, you know, you never had to move to 10 different places growing up, or you may not be perceived by your teachers as a lazy person. You're fighting battles that people may not know about, and you're winning them. And even if you're not winning them, you're facing greater challenges, and you need to be thankful to yourself. And you need to, you know, while you're fighting for that community, remember that you are leading just by being yourself, by being somebody affected by those things, and you're speaking about it, and you're just existing. That is representation. That is radical. And, you know, just existing is a feat in itself.
Thank you. That was amazing. Thank you guys so much. And now we're gonna open it up for any audience that has questions for the panelists as well.
Or on Zoom.
Now. Mm-hmm. Or actually, we did want it to open up to not just questions, but community comments. This is a space for you guys to talk about your experience, you know, whether it is being Black and disabled, whether it's being disabled, whether it's being a person of color and disabled. Um, you know, a lot of our issues end up being the same, especially with disability. I've personally found that the disability space has been the most accepting for me. You know, there's stigma in the Black and Mexican communities, respectively, where, you know, there's issues of colorism, you know, there's issues of like, you know, wanting to protect your community. But coming into this space, we realize that we have so many similarities, just because of how we've been treated. And then like all of us having maybe our disabilities ignored, not taken care of. So opening it up to anybody that has that, if you heard something that resonated with you today, and talking about how that relates to your experience, would be beautiful.
Thank you. I'll say first, I'm so proud of Chinyce and the panelists, and I've learned a lot. I had a brother who was institutionalized at the age of 4 until he died at the age of 27 in Michigan, which we never got to see him. I think I might have been the last person to see him alive because I drove and wanted to talk to him, you know. But when there's a stigma attached to it, like when my poor brother did pass away, we found out later it was with a brain tumor, of all things. But my mother, when she received his ashes, didn't talk for 6 months. She couldn't speak any louder than a whisper. And those things resonated. I listened to the problems that you go through, and I might minimize, which is what I've learned today. I might, let me get an apple, minimize some of the things my granddaughter and her partner and her roommate go through. I might say silly things, like, and not even be aware of it. And I know she had to suffer for the last 2 weeks away from class to pick up her granny who had dental work and bring her to Sacramento to help her recover. And this is during midterms. I did not let that go by lightly. It bothered me. I was saying I can handle it myself. And I think her mother talked to her and you better go down there anyway and get your grandmother. You know, I'm sure that's what happened because I agreed. I knew I could take care of my old self. You know what I mean? But I appreciate all of you. I've learned a lot. I'm glad I came. I cried a few times, but this has been beautiful. And I thank you all.
One in the back.
Hello. Oh, okay. Hello. My name is Kelly Dozier. I'm alumni. I graduated in 2025. And I just wanted to make a comment. I noticed that some of you were talking about housing and how you've had issues with people that you've lived with. Berkeley is a fine-tuned machine in the sense of they won't budge on much unless you bring some kind of leverage to them. Sometimes that leverage could be your knowledge or your positioning at the institution, like how you're known. But from my experience, I had difficulty, obviously, not just because of gender and racism, but because of disabilities. And one of the main issues I learned that was a consistent problem is because it's a fine-tuned machine, they're not teaching students all the ins and outs of the legality of people who have disabilities. I'm gonna give you a great example. In MLK, they have this rule where they tell you can't sleep in MLK. That is such an ableist thing to say. People have narcolepsy, people have issues when their blood pressure goes down, they might pass out because maybe they ate something that had like high sugar or whatever it is. There's a lot of disabilities that cause you to faint, pass out, whatever. But they don't care about the nuance. You can even disclose, even though you don't have to do this, that's not your responsibility to disclose to them that you have some kind of disability. You can even do this And they'll still say, but yeah, but that's school policy. Those are the rules that I'm following, I'm abiding by with my job. So, and I say this to say, students aren't going out of their way. They're just excited to say that I'm here at Berkeley, I'm working in this position, and I have some kind of authority to my name when I'm at this school. I can be seen as a leader, and I'm just following the rules. They don't know. And it's not designed for them to know. Again, it's a fine-tuned machine. So when I hear you all say this, I think like, yeah, but what you're talking about requires time and care. And a fine-tuned machine doesn't care about that. They're running off of, okay, well, we'll just bring another student in here who is not going to complain. We're going to find a way to get you out of here, or whatever the circumstances might be. And I'm saying this as a person, not only as a person who's a behavioral specialist working now, but also as somebody who works as a fair housing tester, specifically getting trained and working to expose the inequities for people who have disabilities. So as much as we like it and we'll say those things, unless we have the power to move it, they'll just be like, okay, that's fine, you're complaining, and we're gonna just keep moving you, which is not good for people with disabilities. You can't keep moving somebody with disabilities because someone you live with has a problem. That doesn't even make sense in the real world. You can't keep moving someone who has disabilities. And actually, that'd be a lawsuit, actually, if you have moving the person with disabilities, because, no, really, that'd be a lawsuit because you just can't. So they're not even teaching the students who are running the institution. This is how Berkeley became a $9 billion institution. They didn't become a $1 billion institution because they did everything just by the books and they took care and dedication. No. It's also because you have contracts with like the government, like military and stuff like that too. But anyway, that's a whole nother conversation for the day. My point is that they're not 100% ethical. You can see it in the way they even teach their students. They're just trying to get you in and get you out. So I just want to say that. Okay.
Hello, my name is Drenande Summons. Dear friend of Chinyce, wonderful job. Can we give them a hand again for this wonderful organization? This work is not easy. I run an entertainment and design firm. I've been running it for going on 10 years from the South and East Coast. Long story short, as much as you deal with people who don't care, I've learned that in this entertainment industry, it's that same situation where it's about money, time, and attention and production. And so I do believe and commend this team of individuals who are doing the intentional work to care enough to make these concerns known in a space where people think, well, you can just get over it. I don't believe that we as Black people, people of color, women of color, got anywhere by just getting over it. It took assembling and meeting just like this to at least plant the seeds. That will take time. It will take intention. But I'm so thankful that I was able to be a part of this because as an entertainer and as a producer, I must know the importance of serving disability communities the intentional way as we strive to be inclusive and do a different thing in the industry in a world where people genuinely don't care. You know, being exposed to spaces like this provides me with a new spiritual and professional nuance in approaching these arenas that I have no knowledge of. I have nothing, you know, and I shouldn't run from it because I don't know anything about it. But again, thank you. Thank you.
Checking in.
Do we have anybody else?
Hi. One, I just want to thank everybody, but two, specifically echoing a lot of like what everyone has been saying too, and highlighting the intersectionality. We're talking about mass incarceration rates. We're talking about homelessness specifically, especially when you were speaking earlier on that. Something that doesn't get talked about is it's especially in the Bay Area. I've grown up here my whole life. I came from Antioch, out in Oakland, out here. I worked out in East Oakland for a bit at Youth Spirit Artworks, which is specifically a place where transitional aged youth, Black and brown queer individuals can go live and actually have somewhere to lay their head. Especially as a student here, I experienced homelessness. I've done it. Didn't realize until recently when I told Chinyce I've actually been on and off homeless my whole life. Didn't know that. But specifically when we were talking about disability, like there was so many nights when I didn't know where I was going to sleep and I had to go to school the next day, or I had to go home and take care of grandma. And it's just like when you add that on top of being disabled or being Black or being brown, and especially MLK, some students don't even have somewhere to sleep. They don't even have a car.
So the policies, sometimes like instructors will come with their own policies, like professors will come with their own policies, GSIs, MLK. And I remember telling them, like, your policies don't trump the law. What is wrong with y'all? Just because you don't understand the rules that govern your job doesn't mean you can just make any policy up and think that that overrides the law of the land. It doesn't. But when you tell people this, one, they either don't believe you because the communication thing, you know, like you may not be the right person to deliver a message. They may not hear because you're disabled, you're a woman, some kind of appeals to authority nonsense. So like they don't want to hear you. It has to come from someone else's mouth. But that is common when I hear too, when a lot of you are talking about, oh, in the classroom, the professor will be like, F your, you know, your rights. And it's just like, no, F your policy. What are you talking about? Your policy means nothing on the paper that you wrote it on. The ink that you wasted to print on the paper means nothing over the law that's over the land. What is wrong with you? But they don't hear it. So yeah.
I appreciate you. Yeah, and like when we talk about that too, and just human decency, no one's provided human decency in the first place anymore. And then when you start layering on being Black or being disabled or being a person of color, being neurodivergent, being in a wheelchair, anything that you guys may be experiencing, we carry each one of those identities with us. And then I just want to like highlight the fact that especially here, the majority of our houseless population is Black or brown. They're ex-inmates. It's people down the block, people we grew up with. It's anybody and everybody. It doesn't matter how high up you are. This shit affects you. Being disabled affects you. And we have to hold our people together and we have to hold them up. But we also have to hold ourselves up. If you're not holding yourself up and your community is also going through stuff, what are you doing at the end of the day? Are you taking care of yourself? Because community care is also self-care. And that's all I have to say.
I want to jump in real briefly. Do we have a Zoom?
Yeah, Gary shared on Zoom, being Black, disabled with cerebral palsy, the only Black disabled child in school was pressure, but being teased by other disabled folk was very hard to deal with, thinking that they were my ally. CP was called the ugly disability.
Thank you so much for sharing. I know my time is done. I really just want to jump in as we're talking about it. And as we're in this space, as we're talking about care, you know, I feel like Berkeley is going to be Berkeley as you're discussing, as you're talking about. And I think the hope from this conversation that we had over the past day is it is really asking, what are you going to do in your spaces and what are you going to do in your home? Because you might be some kind of political advocate, like I know you're like pre-law, but the majority of us aren't going to be in spaces where we're like allowed to put ink on paper and say things are going to be different. So the question is really like, what more do you want to learn and what more do you want to do so that the culture of care in your workplace or at your house or in your relationship with yourself is different? Because I feel like that might be the most you can do. It's not the most for everybody, but for some people it really is like, these are my friends, these are my community, and I want us to love and respect each other and build in a way that's sustainable, because that is important.
Yeah. One last thing, because you know what? I went through the same confusion that these things that this school is saying are against the law, a California law, at least. And I don't know if I should be saying this in recording. But, of having faced retaliation from the university and whatnot, just for being a student advocate, for speaking out about these things, and then like realizing the systems behind it, realizing what, I want to put this into Google, what the university's constitutional autonomy means for us as students and what rights as students and workers, not student workers, workers that are enrolled at the second largest employer in the entire state, what that means for people that, are stakeholders of this university, how, understanding that issue made me understand so much and want to fight against it because it's wrong. It's completely wrong. How we are, that this university serves so many people and is so prestigious for the people that haven't had those issues going through life. And for the people that were never meant to go here, were never meant to be disabled, were never meant to be Black, were never meant to be a person of color or a woman even, to come here and succeed, to get in despite those challenges, we are not set up to succeed. We are not considered in the story. And there's a lot of policy at this school that perpetuates that, that we are not used to, that we don't even know that we're undergoing. And that's what I've been fighting to change. My biggest questions in student government are usually like, why? Like, wait, why does that, like, because there's this systematic like background that you have, like this institutional knowledge you have to start understanding. Like when I first got into this space, I was like, lobbying at the state capitol and like, I had a legislator that really, or a staffer that like really spelled it out to me because I didn't understand what the constitutional autonomy of the university was at the time. And like, criticizing, our school. And I was like, because they're wondering like, wait, why are you coming to us for this money? Like your school should be doing that for you. Like, that's weird. And, like that criticism led me to try to figure out, okay, wait, what's really going on? Like, why is the school so great? But like, I'm facing so much inequity and I'm struggling really bad. There's a lot to that story. And the fight is really scary because we all go here, we're workers or we're students. And we're, enrolled here and they have the ability to retaliate again.
Live in student housing.
Yeah. And, they have power over you. And again, the only way we can combat that is through working together. And it's not without fear, I think, but again, like as student leaders, we take a responsibility and we want to speak for you. And, we want to share your stories and whatever you're comfortable with. But yeah, thank you guys for coming to this space. Seriously, it's so beautiful.
And I just want to say thank you to everyone as well, particularly for the individual that was on the Zoom comment. Thank you for sharing as well. That is something that in the Black community, we have a saying, not all skin folk is kinfolk, meaning that sometimes it be your own people that will do you dirty. I mean, just do you wrong. There was a phrase, a saying, I might be messing it up, but the trees in the forest were talking amongst themselves. And when the axe showed up, one of the trees said, hey, look, he's one of us. And in reality, he was not there to be one of them. He was there to destroy them and to take them down. So sometimes it is the individuals that are in proximity to you that might be even going through the same thing that you're going through that are helping the system tear you down even further. So just, with that being said, just keep that, keep your head on a swivel and, try to just be 100 with the people that are 100 with you, even if they don't look like you, even if they don't have the same whatever. I'm always going to say this. I think this gentleman said something very profound. He said, just paraphrasing something about, I should be running from it. And in my mind, I was like, but you're running towards it, which is a beautiful thing because that's where the magic happens. When there's someone else who's not like me and I go and I spend time with them and talk with them and learn from them and they learn from me, that's building community of care. You know what I mean? So that in and of itself, I feel like is something that I would challenge all of us to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I had one more question though, because I know that there's a Black Student Union, but is there an NAACP on campus? Do you have an NAACP group on campus? It's not a bad idea to have one. They do have a college chapter, and you can always join. It's the oldest civil rights organization that is, started in 1909, people, by W.E.B. Du Bois. So just so you know, I don't wear this hat just to wear a hat. I wear this hat to let you know there is an NAACP, not NAACP, but an NAACP that you could get on campus on your own. That's what I want to say. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for letting us know
Thank
that. Yeah, we currently don't have one. The Black Resource Center is literally right there. So we'll get chatting with some AASD people, the African American Student Development, and see where we can go with that. But yeah, we want to go ahead and round up. I want to say thank you to all of our panelists over here. Yeah. They did such a great job in making sure that we are learning today and we are in community today. And one last thing just to leave us up with is that it's very important that we have community like this, especially during a time where many of our communities are being attacked by this current administration that we have. And it's very important that we find joy in community, and we also give time to celebrate the community that we have too as well, because at the end of the day, we're gonna always just have each other, and we could definitely need to organize, and we also need to celebrate our existence here because they don't want us here, but we're here. So we wanna make sure that we're celebrating that all the time. I think you wanna say something.
Yeah,
Sorry, let me say that on the microphone so that it can be picked up. Our existence is resistance. And I heard that many moons ago, but I think I heard it on an earlier panel today. And I was like, yes, I'm in the right space. So thank you. I just wanted to share.
Sounds great.
One, again, like, I'm glad somebody brought up, like, the policy we have at this university. And again, I wanted to boost that, the flyer we had, because that budget ask, half of it would go to disability funding and the other half would go to basic needs, which includes specifically, very explicitly funding for more housing staff, and then also basic needs food pantry staff. I don't know if you guys ever try to go through the housing liaisons we have and realize that there's no appointment slots open. I'm glad that we have basic needs, our basic needs initiative workers with us on this budget ask, and they've given us so much direction, because the disability side of things, we are put in a limbo by the university a lot, not giving us our data on time to be able to deliver those results for people. But the stories you guys are bringing right now, that's exactly what needs to be heard by our legislators. I've had a lot of distress in politics, to be honest. But once I've spoken to California is really forgiving, actually. I've talked to them, and they're like, they hear your stories, and they're like, that's what we want to uplift to. I encourage you, whenever you have time or able, to look at it and just and tell a friend, because we all have people that have gone through the same thing. So many people. I feel like everybody I know here, it's going through the same thing. Every disabled person, every person that's facing housing problems. But please look at it. If you want to fight against an institution that's genuinely not serving us and doesn't have it written in their mission statement.
Thank you so much, everybody,
All right,
for
thank
your
you.
participation. Yeah, you're good.